All right, so it is 5:46 PM, and I am going to call the Lebanon City Schools Regular Board of Education meeting for February 17th, 2026 to order. If everyone could rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Color our old left face, carry colors, present colors,
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
carry colors, order colors, colors turn arch,
All right, we can sit down.
I think we set a new record.
That's a new
Number of
record.
people doing that in this.
The most people doing that. So usually the kids will, do you guys want to come back in and introduce yourselves to everybody? So what we normally do at our regular meeting, they'll come in, we'll do the pledge, and then they come in, they introduce themselves. And I usually ask them a question, example, in December, what they were going to get me for Christmas. Very disappointed in all their answers. So tonight, we are going to ask you to state your name, your rank, what class you're in, and what was it, your dream job, if you can be anything you want after high school or college, what will it be?
I'm First Lieutenant Wilson, and my dream job is I want to be a medic in the Air Force.
Excellent.
I'm First Airman Cheyenne Langford, and my dream job is to become a first lieutenant in the Army.
Nice.
I'm Staff Sergeant Ansberry. I'm a sophomore, and I plan on becoming a drill sergeant in the Armed Forces.
I'm Tech Sergeant AB. I'm a sophomore, and I plan on becoming an engineer. I don't really know what else.
All right. Thank you, guys. If any of you know Zoe Ansberry, she definitely will be a drill instructor in some form of the military. So at this time, I'm going to turn everything over to our superintendent, Mr. Severs, to kick us off on our awards this evening.
Good evening and welcome to, tonight we're recognizing the Community Builders Award for Donovan Elementary. So just a little bit of a history here. This is a program that began originally as student and staff of the quarter. And so just recognizing students that were going above and beyond, or staff members. This year we've chosen to move it to the board meeting night and go by building and recognize them as community builders. And we believe it's important to live out the mission of building community in our school district. We want to make sure that we talk about what that means regularly with kids. At Donovan Elementary, we have over 800 students that attend there every single day. And tonight we're recognizing, 8 to 10. And so this is some of the best that we have to offer, the best of the best in the building. And students that go above and beyond to represent you, their families, and us, the school district, in great ways where they build community. And what does that look like every day to be respectful to their classmates, to be responsible, to include others. Here's some things tonight about individual students that are a reflection of you as parents and our school district as a whole. And so we're just really thankful that you're here, that you've chosen to be here with us tonight. How this is going to work, so kiddos, this is going to be your chance to shine one at a time. And so all of us board members and administrators, we're going to stand here in the front. Ms. Womack, and you can come up also. And Yeah, and Miss Wadkey as well. I was looking to see if she was here. Miss Wadkey is back there. You guys can come up as well, shake their hands. We're going to send you out this evening with one of these yard signs. And so you get a chance to put this in your front yard, even if your HOA says you can't, okay? So display this with pride. And when somebody says, what does that mean? It's an opportunity for you to brag about your kid or grandkid a little bit and talk about how great they're doing in representing the school district. We're not going to give you the metal stakes until we're done. That way you don't poke anybody or anything as you sit down. So we're going to call you up one at a time. They're going to read something about you. You're going to get a little certificate, and what we read about you is going to be on the inside of that as well. So you can take that and show it to people later. Then you'll come down and shake everybody's hand, and then you'll go back and sit with the people that you came with. And then at the end, we're going to bring everybody back to the front for a group photo before we're done. Okay? So board members and everybody else, if we want to step forward for that, we'll begin. When they call your name, you go stand by the podium over there, and they'll read their thing about you at that time.
You want to, are you going to finish it? I don't know. I think so. All right, we're going to start with Reese Roberts. Up here, hon. Okay, it's always tough being first, so you're going to stand right here. Everybody can get your picture. There you go. All right. Reese is a strong community builder who consistently demonstrates kindness, service, and respect in the classroom. She is highly aware of others' needs and quietly offers support, such as sitting beside a classmate who felt overwhelmed and helped them understand directions while offering encouragement. Reese makes a point to include all students during group work, classroom activities, and recess, ensuring no one feels left out. Through her actions and attitude, Reese creates a classroom community where everyone feels valued, supported, and connected. And this award is from Miss Messenger and Senor Duval. Congratulations. There you go. Next would be Miss Kennedy Foltz. How are you? It's nice to meet you. Okay. Through the year, Kennedy has shown consistent kindness and empathy towards everyone in our classes. A few weeks ago, there was a student who was a little overwhelmed with catch-up work from being absent. Kennedy went out of her way to write an encouraging note on the whiteboard in front of her, telling her that she could do it. The student was able to find comfort in her confidence and push through more of her work. Kennedy is always willing to help others out with schoolwork and lend a helping hand to teachers. She has a positive attitude and is very deserving of this recognition. And this award comes from Miss Huffman and Miss Ingram. Congratulations. Nice job. I will turn this over to Mr. Gliotti.
Good evening, everyone. I think our first student may not be here. Is Caius Spivey in attendance tonight? No. We're going to go ahead and read Caius's submission here because it's important and a lot to say about him. Caius is not only a great student, but also an extremely kind and helpful student. One of the things that stands out about Caius is that he is extremely supportive and encouraging to others. Recently, a new student joined the classroom, and Caius was the first one to jump right in and volunteer to work with this student to get them caught up. Caius is one of the most well-rounded students. He is not someone who likes to stand out or necessarily be the center of attention. In a world often focused on me, Caius is all about we. Caius is truly an amazing student, and we are so proud of him as we watch him grow as a student and a citizen. And this was submitted by Christy Ruber and Jackie Yarbrough. So congratulations, Caius. Hopefully Caius can see us on video. And now I'd like to introduce you to Henry Griffith, if Henry is here. Hi, Henry. All right. Henry is a true community builder who brings positivity, respect, and consistency to our school each day. He reliably follows both school-wide and classroom expectations, making him a strong role model for his peers. Henry shows genuine respect for others by listening attentively, never interrupting, and thoughtfully waiting for his turn to contribute. Each morning, Henry brightens the classroom by greeting teachers with a warm smile and a friendly good morning. Henry puts forth exceptional effort on assignments and projects, always striving to do his best. Through his kindness, responsibility, and quiet leadership, Henry helps make the classroom a welcoming and supportive place. And this was submitted by Miss Belcher and Miss Hayden. Congratulations, Henry. Great job. Awesome.
All right, next we're going to ask Marissa Sayers to come forward. Marissa consistently goes above and beyond what is expected of her in the classroom. One moment that truly reflects Marissa's character is how she quietly supports others without seeking recognition, whether it's helping a classmate understand an assignment, welcoming others into group work, or taking initiative to make her classroom a better place. Her actions positively impact her classroom community and sets a positive example for others to follow. And this was submitted by Ms. Mellon, Mrs. Tinty, and Mrs. White. Congratulations.
Okay. Would Brooklyn Rourke come up, please? Congratulations, Brooklyn. All right. Brooke is a dedicated community builder who consistently goes above and beyond her responsibilities to support others. Brooke is patient and inclusive, always making sure all students feel welcomed and have opportunities to participate. She regularly assists students who need additional support with being asked, offering calm, friendly, and compassionate support. Brooke's everyday actions contribute to a safe and supportive learning environment for all. She builds strong connections with peers through her kindness, empathy, and willingness to listen. She truly exemplifies what it means to be a community builder. And that is from Carol Ehrler and Aurora McVeigh. Good job, Brooke. You can't forget this. There you go. Thank you.
And next, we'll call up Lila Sprague. Congratulations. Lila is a wonderful student. She is kind, bright, respectful, and everything you would expect a community builder to be. Whether it is academically or socially, she is always ready to help a friend in need. One time she saw a classmate struggling to figure out the directions to an assignment, and she jumped right in to help without being asked. That is the kind of person Lila is. Someone who is ready to do the right thing without needing to be asked or wanting to be recognized. She truly helps others because it's the right thing to do. Lila sets the standard for what makes a community builder with her positive attitude, consideration of others, willingness to help, and desire for learning. From Miss Murphy and Senora Joseph. And last but not least, Zayden Howard. Congratulations. You better face the camera that little more. There you go. Zayden's curiosity and love of learning are evident throughout the classroom, and he inspires those around him. His positive attitude and excitement for learning make him a natural role model. Just as impressive is the way Zayden builds community through kindness and leadership. He is deeply aware of others and makes it a priority to ensure everyone's feelings included during class activities and at recess. He supports and encourages others without being asked, leading with empathy and confidence. Through his curiosity, compassion, and initiative, Zayden helps create a classroom where everyone feels welcomed, valued, and inspired. Sincerely, Cassie Smith and Katie Normile. Congratulations.
So while he's finishing up, I just want to take a couple seconds here. This has become my favorite part of board meetings because we get to hear about the great things that are happening in our schools every day. And so those things that are said about your kids, the staff members that write that, they're here. And so thank you for coming to support the kiddos. Thanks for recognizing the good things that are happening in our schools every day because there's great things happening at Lebanon City Schools. And kids, you make this a great place to work because you're doing things well and you're treating other people well and you make it enjoyable for us. And so thank you for doing that. A couple things here in terms of the next step of this is a picture for everybody. But I want to thank, you'll notice on the boards, this program has been sponsored by Witt's Frozen Custard. And so I do believe it's open now on the weekends. So kids, tell your parents. That means you get to go get custard sometime soon. The other thing is, so I just want to thank Mike, thank you for that, and Witt's Frozen Custard for sponsoring this. The other thing is, I need you, can you be my helper? I need you to bring your board with you. Everybody, please leave your board and your fly and your certificates at your desk with your, or at your seat. She's a really good helper. Thank you very much. Okay, she was on it. So I want one board. All of the kids that were recognized tonight, if you could come up forward for a picture. We're going to stand right here with the Board of Education members. Our communications director is going to get one photo for the district, and then parents, please stand, take photos. We won't move until the last person's done taking a picture. Okay. So if you guys, kids that were recognized, come forward, please stand in here together. Just kind of squeeze together. And we get everybody in the photo, okay? I'm going to stand behind that way.
Are you ready? Smile and keep smiling. Okay. All right. Get out of the way.
Awesome. Congratulations, kiddos. Have a great night. If you had somebody that wasn't able to be here this evening, this has been streamed. It's on our YouTube page as the district. So look for Lebanon City Schools, the board meeting. This is at the beginning of the board meeting, so you can share that with those that couldn't come tonight. This is by far the most exciting part of our evening. So feel free to cut out if you'd like to at this point in time.
On to agenda section 4, which is roll call.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Here.
Mr. Gliotti,
Here.
Mr. Lane,
Here.
Mrs. Dalton. Here. Mrs. Cope.
Here.
Agenda number 5, adoption of the agenda. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, changes? Hearing none. Ms. Irvin, roll, please.
Mrs. Cope,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Agenda Section 6, Communication and Reports. A would be hearing of the public. There is none. Moving on to B, Student Board Member Update. Ms. Berger, the floor is yours.
Well, I don't have too much because I can't remember the last time we were in school for a full week. So I'll report on what we have done. First is our biggest thing in January for National Honor Society is our blood drive. We do 2 a year, one in January and one in April. For a while, we weren't sure if we were going to have this blood drive because we were out of school, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that week, and permission slips had to be turned in. So as an officer who was helping with the permission slips and scheduling, it was a really chaotic blood drive morning, more than normal. But we did have 92 students and teachers attempt to give blood. Only 72 were successful, which is a great number, a great outcome. The only way they turn you away is if you are underweight or you didn't eat something, you don't feel well. That's the only way they turn you away. So we had 72 that were pretty successful. 45 of them were first-time donors, which is a huge number for out of our 92 people. I donated for my 4th time, and this one I feel like ran smoothly, as chaotic as it was. Overall, it was just smooth. We had 210 lives that were positively impacted by our blood drive, which is really exciting. From an NHS standpoint, the NHS, both juniors and seniors, first year and second year members, NHS students donate food and drinks for the blood drive. It's my favorite part of the blood drive is just the 2 long tables that are packed with food. And if you're participating in the blood drive, you can go grab whatever you want. I personally like the apple juice and the muffins. So we have students donate those, and we had a lot of donations even with the short week. And then each grade we have, I want to say it's 2 juniors and 2 seniors who are canteen leaders. So they're in charge of kids who had already given blood. They make sure students are sitting for 30 minutes. They're not allowed to put jackets on. Our canteen leaders are making sure students are eating and drinking. So they do a lot to make this run smoothly. And we had great canteen leaders this year. They really kept track of students. And every year you have just the student who's nervous or the student who didn't eat breakfast who passes out in the gym. But they did a great job and handled it very under the cover too. Sometimes you just hear stories about students, but this year it was great. Our canteen leaders were fantastic. And then the other part NHS helps with is escorts. So as officers, we write passes, and then our escorts will go grab students from class and then walk them back to the gym. And then once the students are done giving blood and have sat for 30 minutes, then they're escorted back to class. So that's kind of what our NHS student body helps with the blood drive and what helps it run so smooth. That's a picture of Kyan Snyder in the middle there. He had a birthday and was given balloons in the middle of his blood drive. So that was fun moment for the day. Just a sports update quickly. The cheer just came back from Orlando. They placed 3rd for a large D1 intermediate. They always have so much fun, and you always see the pictures on social media afterwards, but the girls come back and they're so excited about everything and telling all the stories. They get to go to Disney and Universal. So, in more sports news, we had our signing day, February 4th. We had 15 athletes sign. My sister signed, so I was there, and we had several divisions and several sports. A lot of students that are going to the same colleges. I don't know if you can see it in that picture. I don't know what university it is. I probably should have read up on this. But the 2 in purple are best friends, and they're going to a college together, and then my sister and her best friend are signing together. So that's super exciting, just to see friends that are continuing through the college athletic journey together. But we did have several students sign. It was a long signing day, but it was really exciting. And several sports, too. Spring, fall, and winter sports. With winter sports, that's also a list on the side. Sorry. No, you're good. A list on the side of all the sports that are coming to an end. So you don't always hear a lot about indoor track or dance. They're kind of more club rather than school sports, but they are also have a full season that is coming to an end. For my last few updates, I don't know a whole lot about this yet, but I wanted to introduce the idea of scheduling, junior high and high schooler scheduling. I've been at the junior high. I go every day to student teach, and I have a lot of 8th graders asking me all the questions about the high school and CCP and how art classes work. So we are scheduling at the junior high, and kids are super excited about that, nervous, as most 8th graders are. But we are also scheduling at the high school. As a senior, this is something I don't get to do this year, But I have been talking with Mr. Brunk, and Mr. Sievers, you might be able to speak more on this. I do know that we have two bigger things happening this scheduling season. We have dual enrollment courses, a lot more than we have offered in the past. I've taken a dual enrollment course. I took honors pre-calc dual enrollment, and I'm so grateful for it because I got one of my math credits out of the way. But I do know we're replacing some AP and honors classes with dual enrollment classes, which I think, as we talked about with the salutatorian and valedictorian and the rise in CCP numbers, I think this will really help keep some students in the building. And I wish I had that option just a few years ago, so I'm excited that a lot of dual enrollment classes are coming in. And then we also have some new electives. One Mr. Bronk wanted me to focus on was our sports officiating class. Students are learning how to officiate and referee different sports, which is so exciting. I think that is so fun, and I would have taken that class. But just some more fun classes to mix in our schedule. For student council, our freshman student council volunteered at Joshua's Place. They assisted in packing food bags for students in nearby school districts who lack financial resources to purchase food. So that's the picture on the right. Now we've had all 4 student council classes volunteer in some capacity, and we hope to continue that, but we did get the big class community service projects done, which is exciting. Then my last update is just the snow in Lebanon. That's a picture I took from my parking spot just to show how much snow was really in the parking lot. But when I was talking to Mr. Brunk about it, he said, I want you to talk about the snow and how students just came back and they were ready to go, they were ready to learn. I mean, that's what our parking lot looked like, which is so much better than what I thought it was gonna look like. And it was great. No students complained. They figured it out. We parked halfway in our spots, and it was a very positive response overall. Students came back ready to learn in the building, which Mr. Brunk was really excited about. And that's all I have for updates.
Excellent. So I believe I was the first student in Lebanon history that did dual enrollment as a senior.
Really?
Yep, I was enrolled in senior classes and classes with sophomores and freshmen. So, next is our superintendent report, Mr. Sievers.
I love how Caitlin thought it was going to be a very serious explanation that you gave there.
I was expecting to marry.
That was really, really riveting. So my update is very brief this month. I want to make you aware that in March, we'll be bringing back for your approval several items related to an energy project. If you remember, several months ago, we talked about a loan that helped pay for buses and some other energy conservation work that we were going to be doing. We applied for a grant through the state of Ohio. We found out recently we did not get the grant, but we still qualified for the 0.25% loan, which we had previously talked about at the board meeting. So Karen is working with Scott Butler, and we'll be bringing some information back to the board to approve in March. We think a lot of, if not all of that work can still get done this summer, which would include lighting upgrades in all of our buildings, going to LED, which the purpose of this is you pay for the upgrades and the renovations through energy savings. And so the reduction from what we're spending in terms of operating some of our lighting and HVAC components in the district, going to a more energy efficient, also at the time where we need to begin looking at some of those things, just because of the age of high school in Bowman. They're at 20 to 25 years old right now, and some of those things need to be updated. So we'll talk about that in March. You'll have some things to approve. So just want to give you an update on that. That's it for me.
D, board committee reports, Ms. Dalton.
Okay. I have a brief report this month, which is really just to look at a couple dates that are coming up at the end of this month. It would be to prepare for our Project Excellence nominations, and that looks at our best teachers in all of our buildings, and you could nominate one of your favorite teachers to this award, and there's only 1 or 2 from each school for all of Warren County. And then the Hall of Fame nominations would be the same date, February 28th, and that would be anyone that's worked within the Lebanon City Schools. And then the Warrior Wellness Family Education Day, the same day, takes place at the Cincinnati Zoo. From 9:30 to 2:30, you get zoo pass, lunch, breakfast and lunch, and parking. And it is to encourage mental wellness, so it's designed for families. And encourage anyone to go or to seek out additional information on that. And then the PTO this month is sponsoring the readathon at Donovan, and that starts on the 23rd, and the hope is to have 150,000 minutes read by our students.
Thank you. I think the nominations for Hall of Fame and Project Excellence information has been shared through our district social media, and I think also on the website as well. And so if anybody has anybody they'd like to nominate and you can't find that, call the office. We can figure out how to get people connected to that.
Thank you. CAC, Mr. Gliotti?
Yes, we have no update this month.
Okay. Legislative Liaison, Ms. Cope?
No update this
No
month.
update. All right. Mr. Lane, Warren County Career Center?
Our meeting is Thursday this week, so I have no update either.
Okay. Agenda Section 7, I need a motion to approve the minutes of our regular and organizational meeting from last January the 12th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or corrections on those minutes? Hearing none, Ms. Irvin, roll please.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Agenda Section 8, Financial. I'm going to need a motion to open discussion of the financial consent items A through G. That would be A through G.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Irving?
Okay, buckle in. We've got a long one this time. So as you are aware, we have our forecast, our financial forecast, formerly known as the 5-year forecast. We used to present this in November and May. Recent legislature changed that to now, the last one I presented was October, and then this one is February. So we're shifting our dates a little bit. So we don't have a full 6 months of data built into this one because we are moving to the new dates. I'm giving you a lot more information than I typically give. So if you have questions, please let me know, but understand there is a lot of information, and what is built into this forecast is not, it is very complicated. So I welcome questions, just pepper them out. I wanted to start with this first slide. For those of you who were here when I first started, this was the slide I used back in 2021. What is a forecast? Because I want us to get a picture of what we're looking at. The forecast that I provide, think of it as a weather forecast. It's necessary, but often inaccurate, right? So this is a funny little picture. Think of Ohio weather and the predictability of what we're going to see today, 60s, versus Sunday, an inch of snow, right? We just never know what to expect. Forecast is like that. As soon as I present the details that I have to you today, tomorrow something's going to shift, and it's going to shift my numbers. I'll give you a great example. We had, before I had the actual property values, and then after I had the actual property values, it shifted our forecast $6 million. Those are not small changes, right? So there's so much that goes into this, but at this point in time, this is a snapshot in time of where we're at today. So this is the forecast that I'm asking the board to approve. And the next slide is just a basic, let's start with the understanding, why do we do this? Why does it matter? And what does it include? So we know Ohio Revised Code requires us to do this. I just talked about the legislature changing the dates. They've also set up the structure of what we provide. So we provide cash balances, we provide revenues, expenses. It really helps us take a look out into the future, what we think might happen. It gives us, in the bottom left, an early warning sign. So if you start to see we call it deficit spending, where we're spending more than we're receiving in. We have to start taking a look at that. And we don't want to do that in the year that we're seeing that expense happen. We want to look out a few years so we can have some time to plan. That's really what this is all about. And then we present it, we are required to send it to the state, and we post this on our website. So we want to make sure that our community understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, some of the actions that we take because of this. It's really an important document, and a lot of districts really emphasize the information in here, even though it may shift tomorrow because of something that changes. So typically I start with a picture of where we're at currently. So the top picture is our October forecast. That is the one I just presented back to you, sent to the state in October. The bottom picture is our current forecast, so our February forecast. Everybody wants to know at the end of the day, how did we land? And that's kind of where we shift. Well, you can see the numbers at how we land in 2030 are very, very close. In fact, they're a $131,000 difference. There's not a big difference there, which is crazy to me on the back end because I'm doing so much changing. So we're actually going to go through a lot of what I typically present at a CAT committee meeting. I wanted to give you all this detail. So as we're going through that, there's a lot of things that we need to work through. Now, part of this, the change from October to February, I mentioned, is not a full 6 months. So part of that is not a lot has changed as compared to what we normally see. But also, back in October, we knew things were happening legislatively, and we tried to build in as much as we could. So if you remember, we had a significant change from the May forecast, the prior May forecast, to October. That was big. That's typically what we see, in fact. Now moving from October to February, we've kind of anticipated some of those changes, so that's working out in our favor. That difference was about $3 million, if you remember, from May to October. We also saw May, June, we saw a huge number of retirements in our district. So if you remember back then, we approximately saved about $600,000 in simple attrition only. So retiring teachers with newer teachers, also not replacing teachers if the numbers didn't dictate that. So this captures about $600,000 this year, which then filters through all the remaining years. So we captured that this year, or in the February forecast. We also had a good idea of what was happening on the property tax world, and we're going to spend a lot of time over in the property tax changes. But we knew that the values would be high. What we didn't account for was how high they came in. So I mentioned that discrepancy caused a very large variance for me, but ended up not doing anything in total. So good things. One thing else to point here on the summary version, the last 3 years of this do not account for the salary increases that we might negotiate in union contracts. All 3 unions are negotiating this coming school year. So understand, again, snapshot in time, what I know today, that's what's built in here. But also, if something happens in the future where we negotiate something of a raise, that changes that bottom line. So that's kind of our jump off point. On the next slide, I start with a overview, and I wanted to pull in, on the left side is an image. There are some amazing resources out on our website right now, and I highly recommend, if you haven't seen them, take a look. There's a great information out there. That left-hand picture shows you, if we're looking at our revenues, where do we get those revenues? You hear me say this every single month, and I'm going to say it again because it's important. As of, the picture on the left is as of June 30, 2025. The picture on the right is the current forecast I'm presenting to you. Local property tax is our main source of revenue. But what I think is very interesting is in just a year's time, we go from 57% of our revenue to 60% of our revenue. This is a story that is continuing every year. The local taxpayers are carrying the bulk of our expenses by their contributions to the district. It's growing every single year. So that was something that I thought was pretty interesting. But also the trend remains the same. Local revenues and then state funding. Those are our primary sources of revenue.
Karen, I just want to point out that that's the same statewide,
Yes,
right? And it's not because of something we're doing locally, but because of the system in place for funding schools in Ohio. Is that a
Correct.
true statement?
correct. That is legislative, yes.
So as property taxes and things increase locally, state revenue decreases for us. And so there's a correlation. As property values go up in Lebanon, the state of Ohio views us more wealthy, and so they give us less state funding. That's the system that's in place, that's happening there. So it's not because we're raising the taxes, it's because of the way the system works.
Yes. On the next slide, you'll see the same kind of structure. The image on the left, again, is an image we have on our website. I think it tells a great story. So it looks at, of our revenue, how do we build that into the expenses? And so you'll see on both graphs, the one on the right is our current forecast. Staffing is the predominant cost. We know that to be about 80%. That's what we're in the business of doing. We educate kids, you have to educate kids with people, right? So that is always going to be the bulk of our expenses, and it doesn't shift in this forecast. Okay, so this chart is getting a little bit more into the weeds, but still pretty general in nature. What I wanted to show here, the blue bars, this is our current forecast. 2025 numbers are actual. Those happened, those are over. We're currently in the 2026 school year. So that is what we think is going to happen based on the numbers that have come in. Now, quick caveat, since we changed our forecast to February, normally we have a May forecast that has a lot more numbers. I'm only missing 2 months of the year, right? So understanding that these numbers might not be as accurate as our May forecast would have been, simply because I don't have the data filling it that I used to have in May. But 2026, we believe that's where it's coming in based on the trend we've seen so far this year. And then 27 through 2030 is based on a series of assumptions that we'll go through. I think the biggest thing to note here from an overarching standpoint is you can see how fast the orange bars are growing when you compare them to the growth of the blue bars. Orange is our expenses. They grow exponentially when you compare them to the growth of the revenues. And we'll look at a later slide on why that's happening, but that's a really important thing for us as we're monitoring future warning signs or things we need to look at. That's something we need to consistently keep an eye on. As we get closer to those time frames where we're spending more than we're receiving, you obviously can't sustain that, right? Also, the blue bar, the revenue, and again, we're going to talk more about these assumptions, but taking a look at historically what we've seen in revenue growth, it's almost 5%, so 4.9% is historically the growth we've seen per year on revenues. With the changes that are happening from property tax reform, we are now looking at the 2% growth. That's a pretty substantial growth. And again, we'll go through some more details in later years, but that's pretty significant for us. Okay, something else that we always like to report back to you all is how many days on hand do we have for cash? So what does this mean? How many days can we operate if we get no more revenue? That's really what we're looking at here. So in 2025, we ended with 111. So getting your targets in place, 120 days is awesome. We love it. As a finance professional, it's amazing, right? More than that, yeah, you probably need to repurpose some of that money towards students, towards services, whatever that needs to be. 120 is great from my perspective as a finance professional. Then you start tearing down. 90 is very reasonable, probably a target kind of number of days. You start to get 60, I start to get pretty nervous. 30, we got a problem. We got immediate changes that we need to make. So you can see that in this forecast, we're looking at 2029 and 2030 is less than that 60-day mark. That's pretty scary. 16 days is all we will last in 2030, right? So big shifts. What does this mean? This means we're going to need to either, Isaac said it great today, you can do one of two things. You can increase revenues or you can reduce expenses. So from a planning standpoint, as we're looking out into this forecast, even though it's in the last year, and that's probably inaccurate because we have so many changes that might happen, we have to start planning now for the changes that need to happen in order for us not to get to we're 16 days with only, that we can only last for 16 days.
So something I want to point out, we talked about that, Karen talked about this a little bit ago, from last year to this year, through attrition and through repurposing positions, we were able to decrease our salary expenditures by roughly $600,000. If you guys remember how many retirements we had last year, was a significant number of retirements. Some of them we didn't replace. 2 of those positions we didn't replace, I believe. Others, we replaced a person at the top end of the salary scale with somebody at the lower end of the salary scale. Our comment today was attrition alone is not going to change this problem, however you view this in 3 or 4 years from now. You can't, $600,000 is an abnormally high number for us in that area. Based off of this year, we've got like a couple of retirements compared to last year's numbers. And so we have to begin to have those conversations, and we're reviewing things every time there's an opening and looking at class sizes, looking at caseloads, all of those things. So it's just a shift, and it's what we always do. It's what we've always done since Karen and I got here, was to make those sound decisions. But to put it into context, that was the largest I think we've ever been able to accomplish through attrition. That's not going to be the way that this issue gets addressed.
Okay, so we talked a bit, Isaac talked about this at the last board meeting. Something else that we're going into this with, assumption-wise, is our district enrollment. Those numbers have been dropping. This last year, they raised a little bit from the prior year, but as he presented the anticipated, those numbers impact our funding. So just perspective, again, a resource that's out there on our website is on the right-hand side, the state average per pupil cost, and then where we stand in Warren County. And the reason I put that out there is that the enrollment really pulls in as an assumption when we're building out our funding mechanisms. And you'll see a little bit more in that later. But that also dictates how many staff do we need. If we have significantly less students, we are looking at class sizes. So we're doing things based on those enrollment numbers that are influencing the dollars coming in and the dollars going out.
Another thing I want to point out is the former math teacher in the room. When you have smaller enrollment, you could be spending the same amount of money and your expenditures per pupil is going to go up because the divisor in that situation changes. So while this is a higher number than what we've maybe spent in some previous years, that also plays a factor in it as that enrollment is dropped by maybe 400 or 500 students. So.
But I think we also need to point out, correct me if I'm wrong, as the enrollment goes up, the gap actually increases because the state funding per pupil doesn't keep up with the expenditure of those new students. So I think we're starting to see the new construction trend. 1 year doesn't make a trend, but 1 year shows an up here, an uptick. Dual enrollment's probably going to be an uptick, I would imagine.
Because we won't lose as many full FTEs to CCP, yes. And I think, so the other part of that is, Karen, I don't want to steal your thunder for things you're talking about tonight, but we saw a significant increase in new construction come in what was, that's another thing that's changed in the last month. in terms of creating the forecast. We can all see it. We're seeing it financially in some of those ways too with the substitute levy. So, but it's math. It's all math. But that's one of the things, as our enrollment goes down, it does impact expenditures per pupil as well.
Okay, this next slide, I'm really jumping into the weeds. So looking at, this is just specific to revenue. So what is happening on the revenue side? What assumptions am I making to influence or give you a projection of what our revenues might be? So what this does, this chart takes a look and it compares the October forecast I gave you to the current forecast. And it shows you the difference between the two. So the numbers that you see are literally the differences per line item between October and now. As you can see, there are a lot of number changes. So at the end of the day, for me to see just $131,000 difference was very surprising because there's a lot of stuff happening in here. So let's talk through these a little bit. The first set is property taxes, and we're going to spend a long time there, not necessarily on this slide, but later on. But there's a lot going in here. So we have property tax reform that's built in here, but we also have that change in actual values. So I had estimated in October of property tax value changes. Now I have actuals from the county. Huge difference, and you can see it actually added property value, or actual dollars, not just value. It added actual dollars in 2026 and 2027 that we anticipate receiving. It's not enough to overcome the property tax reform, which if you recall, we built some of that into October already, but you also in 28 through 2030 see a decrease in that general property tax. So there's a lot of things happening in that line, but overarching, property tax had a huge increase from actual values, from estimate to actual, and then a very large impact on the negative side of the property tax reform. The other thing, and I won't go through some of these smaller numbers, the tangible personal, that is the changes that we saw in the property tax values. As we build out those projections, I typically will ask the county auditor, what do you think will happen in the next year? We have no idea 3 or 4 years from now how much property taxes or property values will move. We just don't know that. So we build in based on what has historically happened. That could be high, that could be low. But what I can tell you is that for 2027 tax year, so it's a little bit different, it's what we'll see in 28, what we are putting in there as value changes do not follow what has historically happened. Now, what that means, I can't tell you. I would go win a lottery if I could, right? But there might be some significant changes as things kind of pan out in the county on property values. Again, who knows what the economy will do, but I do think those numbers are not as accurate as they could be just based on historical what's happened, right? I can only go on what I know today. So giving that as a heads up, I do believe those numbers will shift. Similar to what just happened for us adding the actuals from October to February. I think those numbers will shift. On the state aid side, you can see the state aid has decreased. Isaac alluded to this earlier. As our property values increase, the state sees us as a wealthier district, which means they believe that our local taxpayers can fund more of our cost, so they give us less. So understanding that's going on. Also, our enrollment is declining, so some of the numbers are based on strict enrollment. And then the other revenue is mostly pretty small, but these are lines like our economic development that might, you have some new construction or new builds in our economic development areas. Those are payments from, we have agreements with the townships and some cities surrounding us. So that is based on some property values that we imagine will decrease compared to October.
One thing, and just in talking with Matt Nolan, to point out, like, all of us on our property tax bills should see a decrease in your property taxes in this spring, right? And so how that works is that there's a property tax relief for taxpayers. And then for the next 2 years, we are held harmless, for lack of better things. There's a decrease on the personal property tax side of things, but the state will then be compensating us as a school district to hold us harmless for that loss. So part of why you start seeing the red show up in the third year of this is because that's when that begins to change. That's also when reappraisals begin to happen for us, which is other parts of the tax relief things, or the other property tax bills. So we may not see a ton of impact to our bottom line in the next year or two, but it's coming. But our taxpayers should begin to see that relief earlier than the impact will be felt by us as a district. The other thing is Warren County is in the third tier of property tax reevaluations and reappraisals in Ohio. So other counties, you guys have probably seen the news, there are other school districts in Cincinnati right now that are making $10 million of cuts, right? If they don't pass a levy, they got to cut $10 million. Well, that's because their reappraisal is happening or has happened. And so they're seeing some of the impact of this sooner than us. We think there's a blessing in being the last county to go, because other counties are going to figure this out, and the state's going to have to figure out, are they willing to make every county go through this, or is there going to be some changes? So to what we're hearing from legislators and from auditors, like, this may change by the time it actually gets to us. But based on the information we have right now, we have to go this direction. But we're third in line in terms of counties in Ohio. So I think that third year there is where we begin to see some of this impact and things happen in terms of the impact to us. So I want to point out there's a reason why we're maybe not having some of the same, several other school districts, high-profile ones in the area are talking about big levies or cutting millions of dollars, because they're getting there earlier than we are, so.
Okay, and on the next slide, this really just puts in words kind of what we've been talking about. What assumptions are built into our revenues? We see this every single forecast update. Property value changes. So it's typically growing, but there are, on occasion, times where the new construction decreases. So putting in the actuals there. We also have the actuals that we put in. So not just what do we project, we also have the actuals. The newer things that this forecast is looking at, enrollment trends, and then the property tax reform. Just so you have a perspective, we did put in, we are estimating about a 20% growth in tax year 27. So that's, again, fiscal year 28. Per the county auditor, we still anticipate a very high increase, about 20%. So that's what we're putting in for growth for the reappraisal. The thing that's interesting to me and that I'd love to watch play out, for new construction, he recommended putting in a 1% growth. So again, that's what we've done. That is not historically what we've seen. So I'm interested to see how, honestly, both of these play out over the next few years. We just don't know how property values are impacted. Okay, so let's talk specifically about property tax reform. The image on the right is a document that we've been building. It's a fantastic document. We've been working with the Hamilton County ESC. They've done a great job designing this. I have actually, since its creation, used it as a reference point. It's great. It's got a lot of information in it. The image on the left comes from this document. And really what our intent was is we hear a lot about how complicated property taxes are. So this info guide is really talking about where do things come from, how do they work, how do they play together, what laws are out there, how do they impact, to try to educate our community on what is happening with property taxes. We've already talked about this, but you see the bottom there, local property tax is the bulk of our revenue. Local support is so vital for us in that it is the majority of what we receive to operate on a daily basis. You can also see, I know some people have questioned that federal funding level. It's very minute, but it is helpful for us. We do get federal funding. Okay, so both of these come from this property tax guide. I think there are some really interesting things to talk through here. The graph on the left side, so we know that 57% of property taxes comes from our local taxpayers. But who make up the local taxpayers? 70% of our local community is residential and agricultural. 11% are our businesses. That's a pretty substantial difference. It really speaks to the makeup of our district. Who is actually funding our schools? Residential and agricultural folks. And I can speak to the detail of that. It's residential. Agricultural is very small when you compare it to residential. So when folks are talking about their property taxes, we recognize this is truly an issue to be evaluated. They are funding a large portion of our district. The image on the right is even more interesting. This is talking about property tax values and the increase over the years. You'll see that the largest gray section there is the value increase on residential and agricultural properties. Not only are they the largest contributor for us, they've seen the largest property value increases over these time periods. Again, relief is a real issue. It is a real thing that we have to consider for folks. So take this as you may. Those are the facts behind what is happening. I put this on here. You've seen this graphic before, but this is a timeline of all of the property tax levies that Lebanon City Schools has implemented over this time period. It's so tiny, but you can see that one of the things that when Isaac and I first started, one of the things we heard all the time was we're tired of voting for new property taxes. And so we did some things to try to give folks relief. So we took 3 separate levies, combined them into a single levy. And we'll talk about some of the impact of doing that in a little bit. But we have tried to hear our residents and do that. With that being said, we haven't asked for new money since 2019. That's pretty awesome for a school district. And you think about the property tax cycle, and I will say that cycle, if you are unfamiliar with that, is detailed in that pamphlet that's out on our website. It's pretty challenging to manage that cycle with that number of years. So I think we've done a great job. And then on the far right there, you can see how Warren County as a whole compares on property tax to our surrounding counties. So we're doing pretty good. So again, just some pieces of information to really build your foundation of what property taxes is doing. This is where it starts to get complicated. Even the number of times I repeat this, I probably couldn't recite it to you because it is so complicated. It's very easy when you put it in picture form, right? So how does property value become property tax? You have, let's say your home is worth $300,000. In order to determine the taxable value, you multiply that by 35%. That gives you a number. Here in our example, it's $105,000. Okay, so I'm going to be taxed on $105,000 of my home. Okay, great. Is that how much I pay? No, that is not. Then we have this idea of a mill. What is a mill? So you have I'm going to skip part of that explanation, but basically it is you pay $1 of tax for every $1,000 of taxable value. Okay, so we're going to take $105,000 that I have that is taxable. I'm going to divide that by 1,000 and multiply that by the number of mills that any given district has. I chose 16 because you'll see the number 16 on the next slide. So I'm going to pay out of pocket $1,680 for my $300,000 home. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the foundation. Then you throw in what is called House Bill 920. House Bill 920 was passed a long time ago. It was passed because we were in a very similar situation to what we're in right now. Property tax values were skyrocketing, and folks were paying a lot and complaining that they were paying too much. So House Bill 920 got passed because they said, we need to limit this growth. You're getting 20, 30% increases in your revenue. That seems like a lot. It seems excessive. So we're going to limit that. So they created this rate reduction program. And I don't want to go into too much detail here. We've tried really hard, Isaac and I, to give you an overview without overwhelming you, but the information is in that pamphlet online, okay? But just as a visual, today, our current levies that we are collecting from our property tax owners, if House Bill 920 wasn't a thing, we would collect 38 mills. That is what our voters have approved. Because of House Bill 920, what we're actually collecting is 16.428 mills. It's a very large difference, okay? Those numbers look very small, but remember the calculation from the prior slide, it actually equates to a lot of money. Now, they did that to protect the taxpayer, right? So there was good value in what they were doing. But what then they said was, okay, well, we can't kill school districts and take all the revenue away, so we're going to implement this thing called the 20 mil floor. School district, you cannot go below the 20 mil floor, and if you do, we're going to bump you up so you stay at the 20 mil floor. Long story short, we as a district are at the 20 mil floor in both residential and commercial. We just got to there in commercial this last year. So we were not at the 20 mil floor. What happens when you're at the 20 mil floor is you get that full increase again. It doesn't get reduced because you can't go below 20, right? You can't actually get to 16. You have to get to 20. So now we're again at this place where we are seeing very large increases because our property values are increasing so much. Does that make sense? Kind of a background of where our legislators were at to make some of the decisions they're trying to make. Okay. It's a lot of information, so thank you for sticking with me. Levy types. This is going to play into some of this reform. So what do we as a district have? We have something that's called inside millage. We have something called outside millage. And then we also have fixed sum levy. Inside millage is not something that anyone ever votes on. This is set up by Ohio Revised Code. It's shared amongst all overlapping districts. So it's the district, it's the township, it's the city, it's the county, all of us added together. The taxpayers cannot pay over a certain threshold for all of those. So basically they said, Susie, you're not going to pay Warren County and Turtle Creek Township and Lebanon School District so much money that they're taxing you out of their home. They have to use this calculation to overlap, and that becomes your inside millage. For us, that has always been capped. It never changed. It was 4.61 mils. That's what it was based on the calculation of all surrounding districts, or surrounding public areas. So we always saw revenue growth on that amount. It's a small millage amount. It's not large, but we always saw revenue growth. That amount always stayed 4.61. That was included in what we call the 20 mil floor. Okay, so that's inside millage. That just didn't change. It was this thing. People didn't have a say. You just did that. And again, every entity around us does the same thing, part of that inside. Then you also had outside millage. The only difference to outside is that voters voted on it. We can't as a district run on 4.61 mils. We can't operate with that little money. So we've gone to the voters and said, hey, we're going to ask for a whatever, 5 mil levy. Would you support that? And over time, we've done that multiple times, right, to get to the amounts we needed. So the difference between inside and outside is one is not voted and one is voted. Outside millage is subject to House Bill 920. So where inside millage just consistently grew because it was the same rate all the time, outside millage, if we were over the 20 mil floor, would be reduced, according to House Bill 920. So we saw that rate, that is what is shifting to that 16.428 from the prior slide. That is what's shifting down, okay? And we got it down to where we were at the 20 mil floor, which is advantageous for us because that means we're getting a lot more property growth annually, okay? That is where we sat when I first started here. We also at the time had 3 fixed sum levies when we started. Those were the emergency levies. Those were, I'm going to collect $5 million every year. It was a fixed sum. We combined that into a substitute that did essentially the same thing. The first year it said, we're going to add those 3 emergency levies so that we would have collected 12 million. That's what our substitute's going to collect. It was a fixed sum. So every year that millage amount has to shift so it only collects the 12 million. The difference with the substitute is it also captures new growth. It doesn't say, oh, you had 10 new houses, so everyone's property tax is less. It said, no, the original homeowners are going to pay 12 million, and then the new houses are going to add on to that based on their surrounding values and what their neighbors are paying. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's where we were. Next slide looks very similar, but this is reform. What happened? So the state came in, as you know, made a lot of reform changes to property tax. And I'll just go in order. These are not necessarily the order that they occurred, but right now here's where we sit. Inside millage. Before that was unimpacted. It is now impacted. It is capped at inflation, which means that the rate is no longer constant. If property value grows more than I think it's a 3-year average, it might be a 5-year average of GDP.
It's 3.
If it grows more than that, they will reduce our inside millage rate. This is going to come into play in a minute. That's very important to know. Outside millage, doing great. Nothing changes here, right? Fixed sum levies. Now we're including that. I forgot to mention last slide. Fixed sums were not included in the 20 mil floor calculation, okay? So fixed sums were its own separate little entity over here, didn't have to do with anything, it was just collecting its own. Now they're all grouped together and they all count towards this 20 mil floor, or the millage floor calculation. So let's see, how did I describe this? Okay, so if our inside millage is now capped at inflation, that's going to happen at our first tax reappraisal. If it's more than we think it will be from GDP, which it is, we believe that, and that's how we've forecasted, it's going to become less. And we've added our fixed sum levy millage to our 20 mil floor, which means we are no longer at the floor. We're higher than the floor. Does that make sense? Okay, so then the higher than the floor is going to now be captured or impacted by House Bill 920 because we're no longer at the floor, right? So the rate reduction is going to reduce us until eventually we hope to get to the 20 mil floor again. Add to that, if we were to ever get to the 20 mil floor, because we don't pass any new property tax, which we will have to, right? If we ever got to the 20 mil floor, inside millage is still getting capped and reduced. But it's getting reduced by the county commissioners, not the state. The state certifies us at 20 mils. The commissioner comes in and adjusts our inside millage. We could actually collect less than 20 mils. So the 20 mil limit, for my purposes, is really not a limit anymore. So that's a big shift in how we are thinking and how we have to project and plan for the future. The other thing to note is the outside millage is also capped at inflation. So if we were to ever get to the 20 mil floor, all growth is capped at inflation again. The third piece of this is if, let's say we're at the 20 mil floor, and some districts are seeing that this year, which is why if you've heard any presentations from other districts, every district is fighting this battle a little bit different because of their structure and levies. But you can see that Isaac talked about this a little bit. In tax year 24, we had a very large property value increase because of our reappraisal. We were at the 20 mil floor. Because of that, the state said, we are going to issue a credit to your taxpayers to cap that growth that you saw at GDP. That equates to about $2.3 million. The state is coming in and reimbursing us this first year. If we are to ever get back to the 20 mil floor, that credit becomes a thing again. So GDP is less than our property value increases, there's going to be another credit. Only that credit is not funded by the state. So some of our districts are seeing, well, they were at the floor and they're still at the floor because they didn't have a fixed sum like we do. They have an ongoing credit. There's a lot of complicating factors. And a lot of this isn't playing nice in the sandbox, right? They're not playing well together. And so when we talk about this, we know that there are still changes to be made in the legislature. And this is after months and months of us talking through what's actually happening. There's a lot going on here. The other thing that the reform did was it took away the ability to do certain new levies. So we are very limited in the levies that we can now issue or ask the public to vote on.
So in 2032, when our substitute levy expires, we will not be able to do a substitute levy. It'll have to go back to a fixed sum levy, which would not grow then like it's happening. We do believe that between now and 2032, that we're still going to get growth on the substitute based off of new construction. But at the point in time when it expires in 2032, then that growth possibility goes away. And we have to convert it to a fixed sum levy. We were at the 20 mil floor. We had about 7 mils of fixed sum levies or so. So we now go from 20 mils to 27 mils effectively when this happens. So we're no longer not at the 20 mil floor, but not even close to the 20 mil floor.
So my question, my overarching thought, why does this matter for you all, for our residents? Because it flatlines our revenue, right? Where we were getting very large increases that very much helped us cover the inflationary rates we're seeing in our expenses. We are shifting back down and we are very flatlined in revenue increases. So that's why you saw at that very beginning over that graph, the orange bars of expenses were growing so much bigger than the revenue bars were.
So we haven't asked for new money since 2019, and that's because we were at the floor and we were getting revenue increases, unvoted revenue increases. So the fact that we no longer are going to get the unvoted revenue increases based on the way that the system works means we're going to have to ask for more money. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, we're going to have to ask for more money sooner than what we anticipated before because the system and the game just changed in terms of how the revenue is going to grow. So that's my takeaway.
And then one last thing that I didn't put on the slide, but I think you need to be aware, House Bill 309 also gave our local budget commissions a lot more authority. So they can do things like say, you're getting too much property tax, I'm going to reduce what you get. That's impactful, and for a lot of districts, scary. We have a great relationship, and I think Warren County does a great job with all of their constituents. They are doing great work, but that is a scary place of unknown for us, right? The other thing that is happening that we don't talk about because it's not impacting us currently is the changes to homestead and rollback. If the county follows suit with several other counties around the state of Ohio, they could issue additional credits to our homestead and rollback folks who are getting those credits. If they do that, it's at our cost. According to our current assumptions, that would be an additional $1 million per year loss to the district. So if that were to happen, that could be also an add-on to already flatlining revenue. It's not currently happening. We are grateful for it.
That decision would be made by the commissioners, though. That's a
Yes.
commissioner decision.
Sorry, yeah, that was, but yes. Okay, so taking a look at property values again, another graph that we have out there in the pamphlet. It's fascinating. Just looking at the time frame from 1991 to 2024, huge increases. Again, we recognize the problem. We talked about the $2.3 million tax credit. We are being made whole for that, and we only have that in tax year 24 because we were at the 20 mil floor. We are no longer going to be at the 20 mil floor, so we no longer have that credit. That credit, if you don't know, is getting funded by canceling the 2026 sales tax holiday. So the state is using those revenues for funding all of the districts across the state of Ohio for that tax credit. There's also some confusion from the legislature on if this credit is supposed to continue year by year or if it's a one-time thing. So again, we expect some future legislation to address how we handle that.
Karen, can you repeat the one, you said the sales tax holiday will not happen this year?
That is what we've heard, yes.
What we were told is there was a fund that has been set aside every year in the state budget to help fund the sales tax holiday. And so they're using that fund this year to pay for the reduction of revenue to schools so they could give the tax credits. And so that would not be happening in August based off of what we've been told.
And I think it's interesting and important to say, when our taxpayers are looking for these credits, they're not happening with this tax bill that you're just receiving, which is causing a lot of confusion across the state because they are saying, no, you passed property tax reform. Why aren't I seeing this? Well, you're going to see it, but in the next one, and it's going to be doubled up, which is also going to cause confusion because the one after that won't be doubled up, so it's going to look like another tax increase. So there's a lot of messaging issues that I would highly recommend if anyone has questions, reach out to us, reach out to the auditor's team. We are still working through those details, but it is going to be tough to kind of tell what's happening in all of that.
So Warren County is the only county in the state of Ohio that did not issue their second half tax bill and for this year. Everybody else billed their first half and their second half, and then they'll have to provide some sort of credit and true up stuff on the second half. Matt did not issue the second half bill to people because the change goes into effect 90 days after the bill was passed, wasn't in effect yet, and so he's sending the second half bill out after the law goes into effect. I think it means it will be more accurate by the time it comes to people. But for anybody who used to pay their whole year tax bill up front, there's a reason you didn't get your second half tax bill. It's because the tax credits to the homeowners and farmers and folks doesn't go into effect until sometime in March. So.
Okay, so this slide is just showing you a picture. What we've always aimed for was 20 mils, right? Inside millage was always 4.61. It is shifting down based on property values increasing more than the average GDP. That's the assumption. That could always change, but that's the assumption. And then our original floor calculation compared to the new one where we add in the substitute levy. Any questions on that? So there's a lot of stuff happening there. Okay, so at the end of the day, what does this do for us? This is the similar chart to what you saw when I compared October forecast to February forecast. This is a chart that compares the February forecast with property tax reform and the February forecast without property tax reform. The only thing changing is property tax reform. Over the 4 years, we are going to lose $13 million in revenue projections from property tax reform alone. That's a substantial amount of money, right? And so when Isaac said 600,000 of attrition, it's not going to help the real problem. We're still going to have to do additional things to work through this. The first year, we're not seeing much, but fiscal year 28, we're seeing a 2.4, very tiny numbers, $2.4 million loss. If you add in the state share of that and the tangible personal, that's a total of 2.7. That's approximately 6% of our property tax revenue. It's about 3% of our total general fund revenue. That's in fiscal year 28. Fiscal year 29, we're looking at about a 6% revenue, general fund revenue loss. So it's a substantial amount of money. We have been working really well to try to get out ahead of this. But as Isaac said, we don't know the full impact of all the reappraisals. We have a couple of years, which we're grateful for, and we will continue to look at this and try to give recommendations. Okay. So the cash on hand, I think, is very telling of what has happened. Again, this is February forecast with property tax reform, the one I showed you, versus February forecast without. If we were not facing the reform the state legislature passed, we would not need to ask for new money as quickly. We would still be going year on year, still looking because we're deficit spending still, but that deficit spend would be micro compared to what we're actually seeing and projecting now. So it is a very significant change from what we have been showing. And you can't really talk about property tax changes without also talking about the impact to state funding. So again, a very complicated situation or topic, but when our property values increase, the state shows that sees that we are wealthier. Our local property tax payers can fund more of the cost. That's great, except they're inputting that change every year. They're not changing the cost data that they use. So things like average employee cost or average student cost, they're not updating that information every year. So they're seeing that we're getting more revenue because we're wealthier, but we're not getting revenue because they've capped our revenue growth. So you've got this phantom revenue problem, right? You've also got our costs aren't actually being calculated at true cost. You can see that the data is current as of fiscal year 22. The last time they updated it was in 24, and at that point, it was fiscal year 2018 data. It's pretty old when you think about the inflationary growth that's happening. What does that mean? Well, the good news is we are on the state guarantee. We've talked about that a bit, but the state came in and said, your 2020 revenue, we're going to fix this formula, we're going to make it better, but we know that's going to be detrimental to some districts. So we are going to make sure to keep you whole. We're going to give you what you received in 2020. It should never go less than that. We're going to guarantee you're going to get at least what your 2020 amounts gave you, which is awesome for us, okay? But if you take a look at those numbers on the bottom, what's actually getting calculated from the state formula is the top line. That's how much the formula says the state should support us. 4 million, 4.8, 4.5, that line is what the formula says the state owes us. The guarantee amount is that next line, 17.5. So you can see that what the formula is saying we should be getting is substantially different from what we actually got in 2020. So what does that mean? That means if something ever happens to the guarantee, we've got another $13 million to account for. That's
Every time they put a new budget out, the initial proposal removes the guarantee. So when we get to a new budget proposal in less than a year or whatever that will be coming out, every time it starts with, we get rid of the guarantee. The guarantee for us is, we are hopelessly on the guarantee at this point in time. The formula doesn't work for like 500 schools. I mean, it's over 66% of the schools in Ohio are on the guarantee at this point in time. So it's an extremely high number. The formula is not working, but it's what happens. And so we would be in serious trouble if that were to go away.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of very pleasant news for you tonight, but this is really our reality. This is what we're working through, and the fact is this is where we're at. And so what we're trying to do is look at where are we at and how can we keep the district at a place that we are still educating our students. We're still providing the services that we've offered those students who need those services. So daily, I feel like at this point, we are looking at where can we save? What do we need? How can we move things around? We are doing that naturally, but at the end of the day, we will be needing to talk about, okay, how do we increase revenue sources? So the next quote I provided in here because I think it's interesting and I need you all to be aware, we have a very unclear future. What is legislature going to do? We don't know. There is a proposal out there to abolish property taxes altogether. So you might be hearing those discussions. The governor of Ohio came out and said, if you abolish property taxes, you're going to have to increase income taxes and sales taxes to double digits. There's no way to sustain that. The Office of Budget and Communication came out and said the same thing. This is a really bad idea, and these are all the places that are going to go away because property taxes funds libraries, schools, police, fire, county supports, right? There's a lot of things happening. But there's still a lot of chatter and a lot of talk, and we expect the legislature will still continue to reform property tax as a whole. We just don't know what that looks like. So we are being told as finance officials in Ohio school business, make sure as these changes are happening that you are letting your boards know, but also you might need to do a new forecast. It might change enough that you have to present a new one because that is really defining how you approach the future. So just understand we are watching this. Something new is happening every week. So we are keeping an eye on that and trying to do our best to kind of get ahead of it. I'm not going to spend nearly as much time on the expenses, but also the assumptions here are the current forecast versus the October forecast. So what do you see here? We talked about the retirement savings. That first line is just personnel costs. That's amazing to have that kind of savings on an annual basis. We also see a very clear reduction in benefits for a similar reason. We have changes for this year because staffing levels changed or staffing people changed, but then you also see the decrease of future folks. And then these others, those shift, we talk about those a lot, purchase services and supplies, those shift so often based on need and really inflation. So every time I bring you back a forecast, those numbers are shifting pretty substantially.
It looks like you're only adding 2% to purchase services.
They do it by line, so it depends on what the item is. So some are 3%, some are 2%, some are 0%. Just depends on what the actual service is and what we've seen historically. I think we even have some 4% in some of those lines. Okay, so I think we're almost there. Last slide. This is typically where I start with. Where are we at? What are we looking at? So for February, the trend that we know is still true. We started deficit spending. We are still continuing to deficit spend. I do love that the 2026 deficit spend, the 147,000, got smaller than it was in October. So great, that's awesome. But also you can see that grows exponentially. By year 2030, it's huge, right? And again, we flatlined our revenue, we've increased our expenses as we anticipate going. We fall below our 90-day cash balance in 2029. So we really need to achieve new money in that year in order not to go below the 90 days. Now, previously, we were kind of debating on where to go and ask for new money. This is really showing us we need, bare minimum, we need to get something passed in 28, so we're collecting in 29, right? Bare minimum. But bare minimum becomes a little scarier than it was in October, right? A little riskier, I guess. Because if we don't pass, then we stand a greater chance of having to make significant cuts to services and people, 80% of our budget, right? And so as we're looking at timelines and things that we need to do, understand we're really looking at how do we do this face forward, knowing what's ahead of us in a timely manner that gives us some room to really gauge how does our community feel about this? What kind of services do they want us to maintain, keep? We're analyzing all of that. So we're really taking a look. We're trying to be very proactive in what we're doing. Again, this is something, Isaac said it earlier, the game has changed. So we're trying to figure out how we best serve our community in that way.
Karen, what's that number? You said the 12 million's under the 90-day?
Yeah,
What's
it
that
depends on the expense, but it's anywhere from 18 to 20 million. That's the last of it. No one's asleep, so that's great.
We're too worried.
I was doing great until we hit the buckets. So I might reach out to you,
Perfect.
and I would encourage anybody else to do the same with questions. I believe, like on the state part, the income tax, businesses that have an adjusted gross taxable income of $250,000 or less do not pay state income tax anymore. That went away last year along with cat tax. And so, which sounds great if you have a business that's making $350,000. When my business hits $350,000, I'll get on the auditor of the state's webpage and start a second business. So what you're gonna hear is from the governor where new business starts up are booming in Ohio. What's causing it is everybody that has a business, all you have to do is go on the auditor's page, start a new business, pay your accountant an extra $500 to do 2 tax returns, then you don't pay any income tax. So, but it's 200, I think it's 250,000. And businesses in Ohio are no longer paying income tax. So,
Yeah.
excellent.
So I do have one question. As we look at alternate financing such as an income tax, if we did put an income tax levy on, or whatever that term may be, wouldn't you have to pass that even sooner? Because it takes a whole year to collect that, right?
So we're looking at all of those things. You've got income tax timing. You've also got, if you add property tax, how does it impact the floor? And does it actually achieve the amount that you want it to achieve? There are so many intricate factors. The great news is the forecast software can build that in. So we can put that in and really get a good timeline. And that's what our next steps are. We're currently working on what are our options. And we'd like to bring that to the CAT committee and talk through, here are the options that we see, and here's why we think we should go in any direction. We could see a new money as soon as this November request. So it just really depends on where we land with our options.
Any other comments on the treasurer's report? So moving along in agenda section 8, A was the treasurer's report, B is our normal monthly reports for January of this year, and C would be our appropriations for this month of February. D in your packet is the amended certificate of estimated resources. E is our monthly transfer from Title II-A to Title I. F is a very long list of donations, quite a few of them for the administrator's scholarship, so we greatly appreciate that. And G is the then and now, I believe for, what was it, bus cameras or something? So going back, any more additional questions over the financial consent items A through G?
I don't have any questions for you, but I do want to point something out. First of all, nobody can ever accuse us of not talking about our finances as a district. So after that presentation, we've thoroughly exhausted finances as a district. But the second thing is, we've been working, Karen and Wendy and I have been working on something that takes what Karen just talked about and boils it down into multiple bullet points that say sort of what people really need to know. And so we're working on something like this. We'll share it with staff and with the board first, and kind of, if you have questions about what's going on, here's some talking points. And would encourage you guys to take a look at this, have it, if anybody asks you anything, or forward them on to Karen and I. If they'd like to sit and talk about school finances, we'll find a whiteboard and we can explain things to them. I'll need some Coca-Cola during that conversation. So, but this is a one-pager that we're working on distilling things down, and we'll get this to staff and the board here in the next day or so for some talking points.
Is there anything being mailed out to the public?
We are working also, there is a digital newsletter going out this week, and that document, this will be shared with that.
Okay.
And then we are working on a postcard also to go to all mailboxes to kind of give it an update. So
Excellent.
all three of those things here in the next couple of weeks, probably. So.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. All right. I think we're ready to vote. Ms. Irvin?
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, agenda section 9, public records requests. This board does acknowledge the receipt of public records requests as presented in your packet by our treasurer. Agenda section 10, I'm going to need a motion to approve a first reading of the 19 policies listed in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Severs, is there?
We need to approve first readings. I know it says it, but I don't think you have to approve those.
We do.
We do?
We shifted that a couple years.
We just took that out of the career center agenda, but not approve first readings, so I guess we need to put that back in.
Is there any questions on them? Anything that was, I can talk about any of them individually. Most of them were, almost all of them, if not all of them, were related to legal changes. And things that, we've talked a lot about grading and class rank here in the last couple of months at board meetings. Those are some policy changes that we've talked about. There's nothing new there. Most of it had to do with a lot of financial things in terms of state or federal, accounting for grants and such. And then there are some changes in the drug and alcohol testing that have kind of gone back and forth. So in the last couple of years, based off of the amount of blood alcohol level, what the state says is acceptable compared to what, where we are with that. So we were allowed to go up to a certain percentage above zero. I think it's because of the amount of false positives and things that happen on some of those things, I guess. But we decided we probably felt it was best to stay at 0. So there are some changes that have fluctuated in there, but that's why some of those changes are there, with drug and alcohol testing and transportation-related issues. So unless there's anything specific anybody has, I don't think there's anything noteworthy in those.
Is 13 a new state law, the district tax exempt certificate for, is that something new? That was a law that was passed?
I don't know. I'm guessing it's based off of what's the acceptable thing for it, like.
I think they changed the form. Oh, look, I'll get you an answer.
Yeah, just, I was reading it, it seemed, I don't know.
I don't know that it
It
changes
made it a
what we're
lot
doing.
more, it seemed like it's making it a lot more difficult, that's all, so. So we got 19 on the first reading.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, if you read those things, or if you have any issues with them between now and the next board meeting, please let me know. I can answer more specifically prior to the next board meeting, so we can have those on as a second reading.
Any other questions from Mr. Severs or Ms. Irvin on those? Hearing none, Ms. Irvin, call the vote, please.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Agenda section 11, other educational, I'm going to need a motion to approve other educational consent items A and B.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, A is to approve the resolution for membership in the OHSAA, and B is an overnight trip for our high school junior ROTC students. Questions or comments on those items, A or B? Hearing none, Ms. Irvin, roll please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Section 12, personnel. I need a motion to approve the personnel consent items A through P. A through P, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I need to write those down. And I'll just go ahead and read through those. A is some retirements. B, a list of resignations. C is employment, pending a BCI FBI background check. D is some substitute employment, pending background check. E is a list of supplementals for the high school and for the junior high school. F is more supplementals at the high school. G is a board resolution for the employment of non-licensed coaches. H, supplemental volunteer coaches. One is for the 2025-26 school year, one is for 2026-27 school year. I, some change of status. J, a list of volunteers that we greatly appreciate. K1 is leave of absences, and K2 is unpaid leave of absence that's in your board packet. L is a list of stipends. M, cooperating teacher stipends for student teachers. N is an extended days for one teacher. O is a long-term certified substitute teacher. And P is a resolution to initiate procedures for a retire and reemploy.
Does anybody have any questions about any of them? Sorry, you already did your first and second, right?
Yeah. Any questions, comments about A through P? Hearing none, Ms. Irvin, roll, please.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I think Mr. Gliotti made the motion, Ms. Dalton seconded it. Okay.
And I got an answer for you if you want me to address the tax exempt policy.
I just thought it was kind of made these things a little bit more difficult.
It's actually making it a little bit easier, we are not, as a public entity, supposed to pay tax, but sometimes it's unavoidable. A person pays for a hotel room on their own credit card. So it's just shifting how that happens and when we are required to reimburse versus not reimburse.
So it's the card that's exempt, not the entity.
It's the entity that's exempt, so we're required, if I go use my card, I have to pay the tax. I'm not, as a public entity, the district cannot reimburse me.
Reimburse you the tax.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to do the paperwork then to get the tax back.
I couldn't, I would have to pay it. So it would behoove an employee to have the district put the district card.
Always use their card.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So are we good to vote now? We're done
You're
there?
done
Ready?
with the vote.
Okay, all right. Section 13, board comments. Ms. Cope, how's things in McBurney Hills?
Fabulous.
No
comments
No
here.
comment. Mr. Gliotti?
Nope, none tonight.
All right, I have two real quick ones. Throwback basketball game next Tuesday at 6:30 at the old high school. And I appreciate Ms. Dalton bringing up Hall of Fame nominations due by February 28th. Ms. Dalton.
Roy, just to add to that, the Tuesday night basketball game, if you want tickets, you need to buy them ahead of time.
Ahead of time, buy them ahead of time. Ms. Dalton?
Yep, no comments?
Mr. Lane?
Just a brief one. I would urge people to be paying attention to what is happening with all the legislation. The most disappointing piece is that the local taxpayers are taking on more and more every single year. And unless something changes, that's not going away.
Agreed. Agenda section 14 is executive session. At this time, the board needs to enter into executive session for the purpose to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance or to negotiate with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Irvin, roll, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, the board now will enter an executive session at 7:43 PM. No action will be taken during or after this session. We thank you all for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next month.